We are happy to host the Laser Property Services team, and we are live at Freedom Heights, Langata. Freedom Heights, like the name suggests, come and experience freedom. Laser Property Services has a new story to give us, and here we are waiting to hear. Kindly stay tuned. Karibuni sana. We know you as Esther, but kindly tell us about yourself.
So my name is Esther Karegi. I work at Laser Property Services. I head the agency team, the team responsible for sales, for letting, and this new product that we are about to discuss, which is called lease management.
My name is Waweru Duncan. I work for Laser Property Services in the Department for Agency as an officer, where we are mandated to sell and let properties, and also I'm very excited, we run the new product, lease management, in the agency. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here at Freedom Heights and discussing lease management.
It's interesting to hear lease management consultancy services. What does that entail?
Lease management is a fairly new service in the market. We realized a gap in the market whereby landlords are taken care of by the property managers. But on the other hand, the tenants have no one to take care of them. So the landlord is there and his interests are fully covered by the property manager. The tenant on the other side is left exposed as far as negotiation is concerned, as far as looking at the agreement during the lease is concerned, as far as checking on whether the lease is expiring and who gets to remind them on time so that they can get their lease renewed. So it's a service basically targeted at the tenant as opposed to the landlord. So while the property manager takes care of the landlord, lease management service is targeted to take care of the tenants within the same building. For the longest time, we've had a service called tenant representation. But more often than not, especially in the Kenyan scenario, it's a fairly short stint in terms of relationship between the tenant representative and the tenant. So you find a tenant representative coming at the beginning, helping to maybe find space, they negotiate the space, and they exit. But during the time of the lease, the tenant is left to their own devices. So the lease management service comes in place to make sure the tenant is catered for from the point they are looking for space to finding an ideal space, negotiating the lease, staying in the lease, and exiting the lease. So it's not a one-off arrangement, it's a long-term engagement between the tenant and this lease manager. So ideally, it is targeted not just at individual people with leases, although we can also do for individuals, it is targeted at corporates that have multiple units. We noticed a gap in the market where, let's take an example of a bank. A bank, their core business is
usually
banking.
they bank basically.
That is their core business.
It's money. Their core business is money.
So looking at the lease and checking to confirm whether it is expiring or not, it's not part of their core business. Fine, it's important, but it's not their core business. So they don't put adequate resources to make sure that part is fully catered for. So what happens? The bank signs a lease. The lease is put into a system so that payment can be automated to the landlord for the next 6 years. Okay. But then sometimes things come up. For example, COVID came and landlords gave rent reprieve. But how many banks benefited from the rent reprieve?
Very few, because we assumed that they were selling anyway. They had the money going on anyway.
But the issue is, if they had a tenant representative, then this tenant representative could have stepped in to tell them, this is your opportunity to get the same benefits that the neighbors in the same building are getting. So that is basically what lease management is. But it's an end-to-end arrangement.
Right
from the point of coming in, negotiating, staying the period during the lease, making sure renewals are done, making sure the lease terms are being followed, negotiating the lease if need be, halfway in the lease. It's not that simple, but it has happened. And then exiting the lease. So it's an end-to-end service targeted at the tenants.
What does lease management consultancy entail?
It is broad because we look at it from point of entry during the lease and point of exit, as my colleague Esther has stated. So we also mostly, what it entails is looking at the welfare of the tenant, where we protect them from exploitation of the landlord. Remember, we have departments that look at the welfare of the landlord.
Yes.
But we have never looked at the welfare of the tenant.
Does this mean, for example, if we had tenants in a commercial property, would you then, for example, have the discussion with the tenants and go back to say, look here, as the landlord or as a property manager, would you go to them and discuss what the issues of the tenants are and therefore take care of what the tenants are looking for?
Remember, the loyalty of the caretaker is to the landlord.
Okay.
So, who takes care after the tenant when there is those breakages? No one exactly. You tell the caretaker, but the caretaker, the loyalty is to the landlord. So we come in, we discuss the issues of the tenant to the landlord. We discuss about the escalation. As my colleague had said, about the acts of God, COVID, the escalation to be freezed.
So the issues that affect the tenant and not necessarily what affects the landlord. Is that what you're saying?
Both our loyalty will be to the tenant, but so we still look at the welfare of also the building. Because these tenants, we have to look after them in such a way that the landlord appreciates their presence being there.
So who's the beneficiary of this service? Does it just work for the tenant? Who exactly benefits?
I think everybody gets to benefit. Let's look at an example whereby maybe Mildred, you own a chain of shops across the country and you sell jewelry. You have Mombasa, Kisumu, Eldoret, Nakuru, Turukana, Garissa, everywhere. You would have to hire officers in all the regions to make sure that they take care of the leases across the country, making sure that renewals are done on time, making sure escalations are effected as discussed or even done away with in some instances. You would need a full-time staff who would then be engaging landlords on matters to do with the property, especially where the landlord is unresponsive. So then, even you as an individual, for as long as you have multiple units across, then you can also benefit. Assuming you had even just one space within Freedom Heights, and for whatever reason, you are unable to continue with your lease, and your landlord is not keen to let you go because you know how the leases work. For example, you have this space within this mall and you've signed your 6-year lease. You know how it works. You are joined to the hip with us for 6 years, for as long as you're here. So the minute you want to exit, your lease has no exit clause. And the landlord decides that they're going to use that clause to make it very difficult for you to move. That's where we come in. Why? One, we can be able to negotiate for you. And if negotiation fails, then we can find a replacement tenant for you, which then allows you to leave the place and have a replacement so that you don't pay for the remainder of the lease. So that's for an individual. Okay. But the target market, the ideal target market for this product is corporates with multiple offices. For example, the banks, they're across the country. You find banks with 70 branches, 90 branches. The supermarkets, like you have Naivas downstairs. I know Naivas have so many branches across the country. You have other corporates like hospitals, say Equity Afya, for instance, who is also at Freedom Heights. They have several outlets across the country. So because they have multiple leases, they need a full-time eye that checks on the leases to know which one is being renewed, which one is not being renewed, which one are we negotiating for next week. Otherwise, they would have to have a full property department within Equity Afya, which is a medical entity they really don't need a property department.
It's not their space.
It's not their space, and it's not their expertise. That is what we wake up to do, Duncan and I, every day. So what we are doing basically is to tell Equity, outsource this section, which is not your core business, outsource it to us. You can keep 1, 2, 3 staff within your department who keep checking on our work, but you don't need a full department to check on all the branches. So hospitals, banks, restaurants, jewelry shops that have multiple outlets across the country, government institutions like KRA have over 70 branches across the country. I think it's more than 70, and they're
Because
still
they also
opening
have
up
those
more.
who are not, they have satellite, what you call satellite offices.
Offices, exactly. So they could be having offices in Garissa, in Moyale, in Mombasa, in Kisumu. The beauty with Laser is that we have a footprint across the country.
Wow.
What that then helps us with is we can be able to address issues in Garissa without necessarily having to charge for mileage from Nairobi all the way to Garissa.
Interesting.
So that's what makes it an exciting product that we would like to really offer that service.
Are you not also going to cause landlords get worried about, once the tenant starts getting representation, all tenants want everything for free. So are you not also going to have landlords be a bit skeptical on the kind of tenants they want in their spaces? Because they have the property manager, like you have brought it out, they have the property manager who then ideally is supposed to take care of both of them, but their interest is the landlords. So what happens to landlords who will start feeling jittery about tenants getting presentation? I mean, would it be like you're starting some movement of some sort?
No, Mildred. I look at it this way. Both the tenants and the landlords are our clients, and we interact with them on a day-to-day basis. So we are not here to fight for the rights of the tenant at the expense of the landlord. We are just looking at making it very easy for the tenant to run their lease, their day-to-day lease. At the same time, for the landlord to enjoy having a tenant who pays on time, who renews their lease on time. So it's a product that is targeted to make life easy, both for the tenant and the landlord. You've heard of situation where tenants forget to pay their rent, or they forgot to do reconciliation, and they tell you have to wait because, finance, we had issues, and now we are reconciling. That's 1 year down the line.
Or they saw the statement and they never
they saw the
noticed
statement
that,
and they didn't
it had
even
any
think
issue.
through it, or they didn't notice there was an issue.
Okay.
So
Or
what
they
we-
have done an overpayment, for
and
example.
they've done an
like
overpayment,
Duncan
for
would say.
example.
Yes.
So what we come to do is to make it very, very workable for both the landlord and the tenant. We don't argue for cases that will make the landlord lose unfairly. And remember, it's negotiations that come into play. So eventually, the landlord has to agree and the tenant has to agree. It's not a case of us imposing and saying, you have to do 1, 2, 3 things for us. It's a case of us coming and saying, look, this is where we are at. We haven't paid our rent for 6 months because of 1, 2, 3, 4. There's this reconciliation that's pending. I'm giving this particular resource to sit with your team to do the reconciliation and get over and done with this thing in a week. What has taken you 2 years because you couldn't get a resource from the tenant, now we are giving you a full-time resource for the next 1 week to clear it up. So it's not a case of, and we won't, if the rent is 60, we would be foolish to go to the landlord and argue that we want 40. I mean, that's the market price.
Because we have this information.
Yes.
So it's easy for us. We argue with facts that the market rate for this place is this. But due maybe to escalation, you are charging this. But the market price is this. So
your target is basically to see the tenants who ideally have property, those who may want to expand. We know that most of the tenants we usually have are tenants, and especially now that you're in a commercial property, I can tell you for sure, you'll get a lot of clientele from us. Because here we always have that thing about our tenants feeling like no one really talks on their behalf. I mean, it's something that is there, and true, like you say, there's a gap. So, Duncan, kindly just tell us, why should a company seek lease management services?
We will help you identify the space when it negotiate the term of the lease. When also comes to the fine print, we'll be able to pass through the leases, the lease agreement, also make sure that both the landlord and the tenants to facilitate that smooth signing, because these leases can take forever when they go for signing.
You have no idea.
Then now during the lease also, we make the fit out period. It's something that both parties agree, because you can find a bank being given 3 months. With the kind of infrastructure they will put there, seriously, they will take like 6 months to put that infrastructure. Also, the reconciliation part of it. Not one, the last client we did, we found the overpayment.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So are you also saying that sometimes the tenants overlook what they have been doing in terms of payment?
Yes.
I know, especially in commercial property, we have what you call the service charge audit. Some places is once the service charge audit is done, most tenants don't follow up. I mean, is that something that you guys will be looking to do as part of the lease management?
That's part of us.
Okay.
So we are able even to look at the overpayment and also ask for credit notes. So this is something we have done. It's not something that we are starting to do that with the first landlord. Then also during the same period, if in case of exit, we'll be able to negotiate the term of exit. Also look for the, these big like banks, these corporates, they normally have securities that they have with the landlord.
Yes.
We'll ensure smooth transition of those securities back to the tenant. That's something that we have found also in many landlords. Tenants have not claimed their deposits. They are sitting with the landlord. Yes, very, very interesting, by the way, because maybe the tenant just asked once, twice, and left.
I don't know how you will take up this challenge, because most of the corporates that we have what you call a lease management team that then basically does that. How do you plan to get into the market?
The plan is to work with them. We are not looking, as I said earlier, we are not looking at a situation where we will take over people's jobs. We are coming in to make their jobs a lot easier than they were. I'll tell you an example of a current customer that we have in place. They do have a team that handles their property. However, because it's not their core business, the team is partly finance, partly property. So when they are told pay, they pay. When they are told the escalation is effected, they effect. But what they were not taking time to do is reconciliation. What they were not taking time to do is follow up on rent concessions from the landlord. So we still need the internal staff, because they might help us to do like follow up for payments. You see, again, we can't get into the banking system, into their core system to raise invoices and to, get the money moving.
Yes.
But we can be able to facilitate the process by maybe making reminders, by calling for meetings, follow up on the meetings, taking the action points for every meeting, and ensuring they are followed up. Because remember, the staff in the bank, while they are in the department, it's not their core business. So the bank will not hire 50 people within property.
What you guys are doing.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I have a whole team. We have a whole team of officers in Laser. And we are spread throughout the 47 counties. We have 9 branch offices, so that then covers the entire country. So you see, that makes it a bit cheaper for the landlord to do the same thing they would do with the staff that they have, but do it better, and it's more efficient and effective for the landlord.
Great. Thank you very much. I think we've had a very good conversation. I hope that whoever is listening and the corporates can actually listen to you and come to you. So I'll give you a minute each just to do your closing remark and say something to in this program. Duncan.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Maybe you are corporate seated there. One of your highest costs is rent. We are here to look at it. When you are finding the ideal space, we are the people to give a call. We are here for you guys. Thank you so much.
First, thank you for the opportunity to be here today just to discuss this product. It's exciting for me because it's fairly new, and it's perfect for the market. So for the viewers that are watching us today, this is just to remind you that we are here to fill that gap between the tenant and the landlord, to make sure that you spend the minimal amount possible on your lease. And we are here to make it possible for you to enjoy your stay in the multiple offices that you may have across the country and get value for money. So don't fear calling us. Our rates are fairly affordable, while at the same time, they are only based on what we actually deliver. We don't charge unless we have delivered on the service that we have offered. So thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you. Santini.
Freedom is what you need. Come and experience freedom. Karibu Freedom Heights.